Barry, great to see you. First of all, how are you? How's your family? Everyone keeping safe?
We're all okay, to be fair. I mean, the days are a bit monotonous, but you've got to count your blessings. We're together. We're all healthy. My parents and in-laws are all healthy. So immediate family is where they need to be. So it's just a case of occupying your day. I'm a lot like every ex-sportsman. I need structure in my day. I need to plan things out. And it's funny, I'll say around the dinner table, because we're eating a lot together, which is the benefit of us all being in the same house. We're all meeting at mealtime, sitting down and having a chat. But what I'll do is I'll say, right, what's the plan for tomorrow? And I've said it. What are we on now? Day 10, day 11, something like that. I've said it every single day. So that's what I need to get it through. So we're all good, we're all healthy, and we're all trying to abide by what the government's saying. We're all trying to stay indoors as much as we can. And if we all do that, then we'll be out of this before you know it.
Yeah, you mentioned there one of the positives. Your kids are grown up now, but the fact that you get to spend so much time together, probably they've got busy lives of their own. Wouldn't normally get this opportunity.
Absolutely, they've all got partners now. So Billy, who's 23, who's a teaching assistant locally, he's got a partner he's had for 4 years. Sophie and Jess, similar. Sophie's a dental nurse and Jess works at Oldham Police Station, which always causes a wry smile on everybody's face when I say that. But she's doing great. They've all got partners. But what we've said, my wife and I, is look, just respect the boundaries. Stay indoors. There's no partners. If they do visit, it's very much a car length distance conversation that they have. So it's good because, as you said, with them having such busy lives and, you know, the socially active, the sporty kids, very often the only time we do see each other is either at night or in the morning. So, yeah, every cloud has a silver lining, Phil. I've enjoyed that contact time with them. I don't know whether they'd say the same thing about the contact time with their dad, but yeah, I'm sure. Like I said, when we get out of this, we'll all look back on it and say we did our bit rather than, you know, ignoring what the advice was.
Moving onto the rugby, the club's launched today. Rise, This Means More. It's a new membership opportunity for fans who want and are able to support the club during these tough times to get on board. You were very much involved at the club the last time that Leeds RL, as it was then, found themselves in a similar difficult financial position back in 1996. What's your memories of that period?
I joined in 95 to a successful club that had a lot of older players. And in 96, Dean Bell was the coach, got rid of a raft of high-paid players and very much stuck with youth, very much, you know, cut his cloth accordingly. But until the arrival of Paul Caddick and Gary Hetherington, the crowds were declining. There was a lot of unrest on the terraces, and Headingley's the best place in the world with the greatest fans. I truly believe that. But when things aren't going wrong, they'll tell you, and they're very honest people, very forthright people, and we were in a real predicament there in 96. But the bulk of those true fans stuck together. They showed faith in the process, and the people that were at the top had a plan. They knew what they wanted to do, and Gary and Paul, you know, put that plan in place. And we've seen the fruit of that over the last sort of 25 years. I look at the stadium now. The stadium is fitting of those great fans, and hopefully, fingers crossed, a great team that the Rhinos will produce in the next couple of years. But if I think back to 96, the one thing that we had is we had faith, and we had belief, and we had that togetherness. And I've played in a lot of successful teams, man. I've played in other teams that weren't quite as successful. And the one thing that those successful teams have is that togetherness and that unity. And from the unity, that's where the strength is born out of. So fans can very much stick by the club. And I realise that money is tight. I realise that every quid that everybody has in the bank at the minute, you're not sure when you're going to need it. But unless we stick together, unless we buy into what is a really important part of what's going to be a pivotal point in our club's history, you know, we might not have a club to support and give us that morale boost that we need. Because when we do come out of it, the one thing that I I'm adamant, and I believe is we'll all get back and we'll all watch our rugby league. We'll all get back on the terraces. We'll all support our teams. We'll enjoy having a pie and a pint even more, Phil.
And when you think back to that, I mean, it seems like a different age and a different possibility, but there was a real chance then that the Leeds RL club could leave Headingley. It could be sold off. Yorkshire Cricket were talking about leaving. Leeds were going to move down the road and perhaps play at Ellen Road. When you think about the glorious years, we were celebrating 25 years of Super League this season, the glory and the fantastic nights we've had at Headingley, it just seems unthinkable that if and it was the fans that led that. Headingley is home. They kept the pressure on to make sure the team stayed there, and through their support, they made that possible.
Yeah, obviously there were some business conversations that took place there. I'd only been at the club for 12 or 18 months, and I'd played at Oldham and previously at Wigan, and I didn't fully understand the history of Headingley. I constantly go back to the day I walked into Headingley and I went into the boardroom, signed my contract, looked at the players on the wall, looked at the players of the likes of Sid Hines, and there was even a Harry Jepson photo up. I didn't know who Harry Jepson was because he hadn't played, and you know, I was looking at these great people, these people within our club's history that actually, you know, forged the way forward. But as I've spent more and more time, I realise that it's not just about the players, it's not just about the games and the performances. It's about that historic stadium being home. And I'm so grateful that Gary and Paul were able to find a way through to not turn it into a supermarket or sell it to a supermarket chain. That some of the other clubs within our sport, when they've gone on to a new stadium, they've left the place where it's embedded in that community. And if I look at my hometown, Oldham, you know, Oldham hasn't quite recovered since Watershed was sold, and they've been a bit nomadic. That's never been the case for Headingley, and never been the case for the Leeds Rhinos club. It's always been about Headingley being home. You go up, you go past Yorkshire TV, you go up the road, you turn left into St Michael's Lane, and my shoulders drop because I know that, you know, it's nearly time to watch a good bit of rugby, and it's nearly time to share some stories, see friends, shake hands, have an embrace or a kiss if I'm seeing you, Phil, because, you know, we're very close, even though you're a bit furry around the chops these days. You know, it's great to see friends, and everybody has that real friendly feeling, because we've got to get that, you know, that real community and that affection and that love. We've got to maintain that.
And you've been saying you've been using your time in isolation to good use to remind yourself of a few games that you actually played in, but you can't quite remember the details.
I remember them very differently. I have, I'm afraid, very rose-tinted glasses, me, and it's not till I watch the games back in the full 80 minutes that I remember, oh yes, I did actually make one or two mistakes, and it wasn't just swept under the carpet. But I've loved it. I really have loved it, watching those great players from the 70s or 80s who I weren't lucky enough to watch. And I watched the Yorkshire Cup final where Scoy was right at the front, and that was a great game for Leeds. I think that was at Ellen Road as well. So I've watched, and I've enjoyed watching and catching up on some of those historic games that I wasn't involved in. I've probably been a Leeds man and fan for 25 years now. And throughout those 25 years, I've either been involved with, actually physically been there, or watched a lot of those games. But before my arrival at Leeds, to catch up on some of that history has been really, really enjoyable. I've really loved it, and some of the great games that I'd forgotten about as well. Some of the games that very often, I think me and you had this conversation last week. Some point, I forget whether we've won or lost games. I only remember whether I've enjoyed them, and if I have enjoyed them, it probably means there's some element of violence in there somewhere. So it's amazing. It's not always about the scoreboard with me. It's sometimes about what it felt like to play in those games, and again, watching those games that I weren't involved in.
And this week, our focus, for fans that don't know, we've been putting two games on in full every day during the lockdown, 2:30 kickoff and a 7:30 kickoff. And the focus this week has been the Challenge Cup, and we've been digging through the archives. I'm not sure whether you may have got to these archives before me, because I've been looking for the Wigan game from 1999 and it's disappeared.
Has it gone?
And yet I have discovered the 1997 game against Dewsbury, which will be appearing later, which includes a certain hat-trick from yourself, and including a dummy drop goal.
Yes, actually, yes. It was the first time I tried that. The 97 series, the 97 season was, if we're talking about rebirth and rising from the ashes, that's what 97 was about for me. We'd had that disaster in 96. We'd put in enough to stay up, but certainly me, I wasn't happy with that season. 97, we started strong, and in that season, the Challenge Cup was probably classed as warm-up matches, even though there was a pretty hefty prize at the end of it. 97, we played some games before the season had got started, which were Challenge Cup games. The Dewsbury match was one of them. They must have been having a really bad off day for me to score 3, but I actually have a confession to make here now. On one of those tries, when I put the ball down, it was the first time I had trouble with that dreaded shoulder or both shoulders, but this dreaded shoulder, scoring a try. It's not very manly. It's not very macho. I'd like to think I did it in collision with some big monster from Bradford, but no, it was trying to score a try. But good games, and I'm gutted. I won't watch the 99 game, because the 99 game, I had a bit of a break after 20 minutes, went in, sulked for 10, got showered and changed at half time, and it took me 10 or 15 minutes to have the nerve to come out and watch. So I haven't watched an awful lot of that game. I know it was an absolute classic that the Rhinos managed to win with 12 men. Great performances. I think Moz had a blinder on the day. Moz and Glanville, I think, were the picker. Shez might have got man of the match, because Shez often did in them Challenge Cup games. Shez were a real big game player. So yeah, good memories of that Challenge Cup. So I watched the Widnes game the other week. Kevin Sinfield, of course, played in that. Was that the quarterfinal?
Quarterfinal, yeah.
Quarterfinal, and then semi-final was against Bradford, which you know me long enough. That is my favourite game of all time. That Bradford game at I think it was the McAlpine Stadium back then, and just a wonderful team, great team performance. Daz and Faz, everything that was above grass level. Shez was a maestro. I remember him nicking the ball off Danny Peacock from a scrum, and Yestin, of course, was just a magician in that game, and it was a phenomenal game. Third time we played Bradford in a semi-final. First time we beat them out of that trilogy, and was one of the best nights out after a game I can never tell you about.
You don't need to tell me, I was there.
Are you sure you want to admit to being there, Phil?
Yeah. And talking of cup semi-finals, just quickly, we'll finish up there. Of course, one of your infamous moments in cup semi-finals we put out last week. I sent you a message to flag it up if you wanted to show the kids how not to kick goals against Toulouse. And then we've got coming up at the weekend the 2003 semi-final against St Helens, which is still regarded as one of the greatest games of all time.
Yeah, phenomenal game, that one. I think McAlpine and John Smith's now has always been a good venue for us, and I think latterly in the last decade, it's only become a bit of a bogey ground. 2015 is one of my favourite games of all time. 2012, which was at Warrington, is now my favourite game. Is my memory right, Phil? Is that the one where Kev kicked the goal to take it into extra time? That for me is the best game. But the semi-final where Danny Maguire came on and scored 2 tries as a baby-faced assassin, but him being picked in that game that week showed great courage from Powley to put Danny Maggs in there. Of course, Danny Maggs and Rob Burrow were both fighting for one of those bench spots, and the less said about the 2004 goal. I still think it went over. It went high, but it went over. But I cannot tell you the absolute rollicking I had off the coach at the time, and he brought it up in review. He rollicked me one-on-one, and yeah. But I would still do it again. I would just not take it as far back.
Just finally, just to wrap up, Maz, I know you'd love to send a message to all Rhinos fans and all rugby league fans just to stay safe, and we'll come as a sport. We'll come back stronger from this.
Yeah, I think we won't take stuff like Thursday night matches and Friday night matches for granted. I know we're going to come back. I know it's going to be different, and there's going to be many weeks where you've got teams playing more than one game in that 7-day or 5 or 7 day period. We're just going to have to get our heads down, all of us. That includes supporters. So we need the supporters to get behind the teams. We might have to forgive our players if they're a little bit rusty, because as soon as we get the all clear, from what I understand, we're going to start playing. So everybody involved in rugby league, whether you're a passing supporter, an avid supporter, or a loyal supporter, get out and support these great men when they finally get the nod. So a thank you from everybody involved in sport. I've been lucky enough to start and end my career in sport, and I will always say that the best atmospheres create the best games, because players will rise to that. So get behind your team, whoever it is, but mainly the Rhinos.